pretty broad, and I think is at a high enough altitude not to constrain anyone, but at the same time is a research plan that ties together economic development in a way that I think allows us to really go forward and to show our worth both to the federal government and the agencies of the federal government who are keen on job growth and who want to see much more translation of research and the products of research that come from government funding moving out to the marketplace to increase prosperity. At the state level, I think that message will also eventually begin to ring true with people. They haven't heard us say as much of that before as we are saying now, and I'm hopeful that over time, as legislators and prospective legislators recognize that we're trying to have broader impacts, that in fact those broader impacts are good for the state and are independent of party, and ultimately maybe someday they'll see fit to give us a bit more of their investment money to build new facilities and to increase the number of scholarships that we have and to increase the amount of money we have available to pay our faculty. So a lot of things are tied together in this, and entrepreneurship is a key factor, because if we're going to translate those products of our research and those products of knowledge generation of all kinds into the marketplace in meaningful ways, then we need people to do that. And in our 5-part plan, we've talked about cooperation and collaboration. I went through this with the Board of Curators last week and did some videos, and I think, Gloria, those videos will be put up, or Dana will be put up soon if they're not, so people can see them. And one of the finest ones that I think is in there is the one with Hao Lee, which shows him coordinating and collaborating with people at each of the other campuses on the work that he's doing with bone transplants and the like. So it's really pretty cool. The second thing we've talked about is being smart with intellectual property and not being overly possessive when it doesn't make sense. And we talked a lot about that in our meeting on intellectual property. We also talked about it in the context of industrially funded research or corporately funded research. We'd like to see us try to do more of that in the future as well, and to look for ways to partner with corporations so that we could do more overall research and, again, have more benefit for society. The third thing we've talked about, and the fourth thing, is all about entrepreneurship. Number one, creating more entrepreneurs from our undergraduate population, and we're working on that right now with the Entrepreneurship Scholarship and Interns Program. We should have announced those people who are our system winners of those scholarships and internships this week. And I'm very proud of that program and hope that we could continue it into the future with external funding, either from the state or from a private donor or donors, or some combination thereof. The fourth thing we've talked about is unleashing the willing, and you are the willing because you're here today, and those are the folks who want to actually be entrepreneurs and who are interested in it. And Steve Wyatt said, now Hank, one thing you should do, and emphasize this morning, and I think he's right, is that we've kind of pivoted on this. So whereas maybe we were a little ambivalent about entrepreneurship and the like in the past, we're not ambivalent at all. And I think today is the first step to try to show our faculty and our graduate students and our postdocs that we want to support people who have the courage and the like to go, who have the wherewithal to go forward and who want to become entrepreneurs. It's not an easy path. It's a hard path. And we need to appreciate people who take that path and to help support them as they go forward. So I wanted to say it's more than okay for our folks to start to think about becoming entrepreneurs and building companies. And I think it's prestigious to do that. And over time, I think the Academy will adjust to this and actually make it part of the core of what many faculty do. Now, who does this? I often get that question. Folks will say to me, well, that's great. Obviously, people in science, engineering, and business can be entrepreneurs, but the rest of us don't feel like we're included. I really would like to say nothing could be further from the truth in my experience. Entrepreneurs come from all disciplines. Some of the most creative entrepreneurs come from the arts and humanities, and frankly are not from engineering. So for those folks who worry about that and consider it sort of off-putting, it may be off-putting for them individually, and that's fine. but it's really not off-putting for the whole discipline. And it's certainly not off-putting, I don't think, for their students. And we want to encourage our friends in the arts and humanities to think broadly about what they do and to help us, those of us who are in the sciences and engineering, to see the human aspects of technology so that we could do even better as we seek to commercialize and improve, let's say, the human condition. I'd also like to point out that the law school, the medical school, any of these other schools should be involved as well. And we'd like to see people coming forward, and we think we will be seeing people coming forward who have great ideas. So not everybody has to participate, but we have to have a few people who want to do this, and we have to cherish those people and help them go forward, and that's part of what today is about. Let me turn now to our panelists and introduce them to you, and I'll start at the top here of what I have. Joan Gable, our Dean of the True-Last School of Business, is here. Diane Kander is sitting with her. Diane is an assistant teaching professor of management in the school. She's also a senior fellow at the Kaufman Foundation and the best-selling author of All in Startup. So the two of them, I think, are going to regale us today with a lot of good information about startups and information related to entrepreneurship. Chris Fender, many of you know, who's our director of OTM. Steve Wyatt, who's the new Associate Vice Chancellor in the Research Office for Economic Development. Scott Ullman, back here. Scott, raise your hand, you're in the back there, who is our Assistant Vice President for Innovation and Economic Development. Chris Bouchard, Chris, raise your hand, State Director of Missouri Small Business and Technology Development Centers. Jen May is back there. Jen is the Director of the Conflict of Interest Office within our office. Bill Turpin in the back. Bill is really our entrepreneur in residence, but more officially, he's the CEO and Director of the Missouri Innovation Center. Brian and Katie Thompson, who will also regale us. They are actual entrepreneurs, people who have successfully made the transition, and will be here to talk to us about their co-founding of a company called Elemental Enzymes. So we have a lot to do today. Our first topic will be to try to define what entrepreneurship is. I'm going to turn the floor over to Joan Gable and to Diana Kander.
Would you like to use this?
Yeah. I kind of like the microphone that's more like holding a shampoo bottle in the shower. I don't know, this one's a little small, but okay, so I'm not an entrepreneur either, as all of you know, but I'm very lucky to work in the company of them and be very actively involved with a very large group of people from across campus in the active preparation of the next generation of them. And so our job, Diana's and my job, we think today is to demystify for you to some degree what that means to try to educate yourself into entrepreneurship, whether it's because you are toying with an idea or concept, as all of us in higher ed, especially on the scholarly side, are usually doing in one form or another, or you hope to someday, or you want to be in the company of people who are and want to be part of the overall team, which is where I sit, and I can tell you is also a very invigorating process. We teach students to become entrepreneurs, but we don't do it in the classroom typically. We have classes on entrepreneurship, not just in the College of Business, but actually in all the colleges in one form or another. We have classes that are designed to, let's say, open the student's mind to the idea of commercialization, innovation, entrepreneurship, everything that might fall under that umbrella. The main way in which we do this in the College of Business is actually through a cross-campus partnership called the Entrepreneurship Alliance, which Diana is one of the directors of. The Entrepreneurship Alliance is 3 years old now. It's an expansion, for those of you who've been here longer, of something we used to have called the Flegel Academy for Aspiring Entrepreneurs, which was funded by Leslie Flegel, who's still very actively involved. But then 3+ years ago, an alum of the Human Environmental Sciences College, Dave Spence, said that we should be making entrepreneurship thought, education, and opportunity available to all undergraduate students on campus, regardless of what college they're in. And so he is now funding what we're now calling the Entrepreneurship Alliance, which is a pretty significant expansion of what we used to do and has students in it from all over campus. And that program supports students both in the classroom, in the entrepreneurship minor that we have available on campus. Students come from various programs, but there's a lot of outside the classroom work, which is where a lot of the opportunity that we think will be translatable for you all sits in how they do risk assessment, how they identify the validity of projects, how they look for funding, public-private partnerships, mentorship, et cetera. We want them to feel leadership skills. We want them to feel safe space to test ideas. We want them to understand their tolerance for risk, and we want them to feel passionately about it. And those are all things that I think everyone involved in this space, students of life, students in the classroom, need to embrace on whatever level is comfortable for them in order to become part of the willing, as Hank says. So each year we have students starting businesses while they're in this program. They launch apps, they produce products, they have services. They're part of job growth and economic development, and some of them don't, and they become regular old employees in corporate environments, including this campus, or they become entrepreneurs within a traditional corporate environment, all of which can be part of this overall cycle, and all of which in different ways plays into what we're trying to accomplish on campus. We have other things that we do on campus that I just want to make you aware of, and to the extent that they may become interesting to you, because they aren't just student learning programs. They're all designed to be part of the overall machine of entrepreneurship and commercialization that Hank was describing. We have the Allen Angel Capital program, which invests in high-growth startup companies, typically pre-revenue generating companies, classic angel investment, much like Centennial investors here in town or Archangels over in St. Louis, and this a very wide population of angel investors. But there are students doing the due diligence and research in that class. It's a class and an academically oriented social organization, and while their investments are not, they invest real dollars, and while their investments aren't limited to on-campus enterprises, that has been where most of their investment has gone to date, and so it's part of the cycle here on campus. When a product comes to life, of course, we have the Missouri Innovation Center, and we have the CEO here, and part of our relationship with that center is that the high growth ventures class, which is a graduate level class, is taught there. Diana teaches that class with Bill, all in the family, predominantly MBAs in that class, but not exclusively. And we were just talking last night about how to make that class more open to students from other disciplines, or your students from other disciplines who can then be feeding your ideas and innovations through the work that they do in that class. We have a new certificate in life sciences entrepreneurship. I see Jerry Parker here. This was a twinkle in our eye for a long time, and we have students rotating through medicine, engineering, and business in order to really think about that side of innovation, which really plays to our cross-campus comprehensive strengths here on campus. And so all of those things are academic programs, but they're tied into what you're teaching our students, what your scholarship is likely to do, the way our students are involved in your scholarship, and can all be part of your process as you consider translating your ideas and innovations into an entrepreneurial model. But the best person to talk about this is not me, because I'm not an entrepreneur either, but I play one on TV and I employ them, and I'm very pleased to hand the mic over to our expert, who is Diana Kander, who, as you heard, is teaching with us. She's directing the Entrepreneurship Alliance. She teaches the High Growth Ventures class in the incubator. She is herself a serial entrepreneur. She's a best-selling author in the area, and she can give you context on what we're doing with students and how this can be translated to you. So please join me in welcoming my friend and colleague, Diana Kander.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for making the trek through the snow this morning. I just like to take a small survey. How many people here are interested in starting a business? Raise your hand. Like, you have an idea, maybe you're thinking about it. Okay. How many people are here to look for opportunities for students to get more involved in entrepreneurship? Okay, fantastic. So it's a really broad topic. What is entrepreneurship? I'd love to answer specific questions that you have. I have a spiel, but I can pretty much tailor it to whatever questions you have, so that would be more fun. And then it looks like it's more participatory. Does anybody have specific questions, things that you were hoping to find out here today about the School of Management, the entrepreneurship program, starting companies, burning questions that you have, whether we can teach entrepreneurship? Yeah, Colin.
I feel like that high-growth ventures class, that the students that go through that process are more likely to take that step, or they're less afraid of taking the risk?
Well, I will tell you that we go around the room and ask everybody why they're taking the class on the first day, and several students said that one day they hope to start a business. And on the first day of class, they do start a business. We break them up into teams. So it's a 3-hour class. We do introductions for about an hour. Then we break them up into teams of 4. Then I give every team $1, and then they have to leave the room and go make as much money as possible over the next hour and come back and report their findings. It's a very, very different experience than most first days. So they quickly find out that entrepreneurship is about action and talking and selling and figuring out what works. So on the first day, we were able to check that experience out for a lot of people. Everybody made money. The smallest amount of money made in the hour this semester was $27. The largest amount was $43, which is pretty good for an hour of work. It's a pretty good rate. And the lessons that they learned in that 1 hour transferred over throughout the semester, because there are a lot of things that you learn about your initial plan of how you're going to make money and how that might not work out. You have to pivot, try something else. It was a very, very interesting experience. There were several students in the class that are interested in continuing on with the projects that they're working on and continue to commercialize them. And it is our goal and objective as we pick ventures for the students through the semester to pick something that they can continue working on should they choose to do so after graduation. So I don't know that you can convert people to entrepreneurship. To me, I think about it more as like a sports skill. You can't teach somebody how to be good enough to play in the NBA, but you can show them the game and see, they decide for themselves if they like it or not, and they can tell whether they have some natural talents, and then you can use coaching to kind of draw those natural talents out and explain to them, the basic fundamentals and the rules of how the game works, and save them hopefully some time and pain in the process. So that's a class that we have in the fall in the MBA program, and in the spring I teach a class on corporate innovation called Entrepreneurship. It's a very, very similar styled class, very experiential. Most of the learning takes place outside of the classroom. And the reason is these skill sets that we're trying to teach, I believe I'm very biased, are one of the most valuable skill sets that we could teach to the future workforce. Every company believes that innovation is their key to staying in business, and innovation no longer happens at the very top. It used to be that management would, decide which direction the company would go, but today they depend much more on the front lines, the people who interact with the customers, to come up with new problems that the customers are facing, to come up with new ideas. And they're looking for an innovative workforce. I think an entrepreneurial mindset is a key tool that we can teach to our students that will benefit them for their entire life, whether they decide to start their own companies or work inside an organization. There's no jobs anymore where somebody tells you specifically what to do. Most jobs are now people have to figure things out for themselves, and at its very core, that's what entrepreneurship is. It's problem solving, it's figuring things out, and it's dealing with uncertainty. And there's today more and more uncertainty in the world. Other questions? Yeah? Sure.
So what skill sets do you see as a commonality amongst all those that are successful entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think.
Question.
Yep.
And the next question is, how do you turn a buck into $43 an hour?
It's a great question. You should come take the class and find out, because we teach you how to turn it into a lot more than $43 over the course of the semester. So what are the core skill sets? So there are some inherent abilities that you can't teach people, like tenacity, hard work. But there are some things that we can teach them, like overcoming a fear of failure. That's one of the biggest barriers in entrepreneurship. People starting, people making decisions in their companies, just being afraid to fail. Because you're not used to it in your everyday life. So we make them deal with failure on a regular basis. We teach them customer interaction and empathy, which is an invaluable skill to today's entrepreneurs. We teach them that business no longer originates in something that you can create or think of, but it's in your your customers determine whether there's actually going to be a business. So you can't just think of something and then try to brainstorm who wants to buy it, but you need to go to your core and find out if there's something there. So to me, those are the having, the mental fortitude to move forward and to try things and to figure things out. These are situations that we put them in on a regular basis. And then we give them kind of small guidance into which questions to ask. So in the corporate innovation class in the spring, the first third of the semester, they go out and they try to discover problems that companies can solve, but we give them the tools to figure out what kind of questions to ask. So questions and how to ask those questions, how to listen to responses, because a lot of that stuff sounds intuitive, but it's a lot more difficult to do in practice than it sounds. Did I answer both questions? So there were 4 teams. 2 of them were food delivery businesses. One of the companies sold candy at a high markup. They went and bought a little bit of candy, sold it, went and bought some more, sold it, went and bought some more. And then the last team, they just went up to people and said, "What will you give me money for?" And it turned out that the thing that was most popular was, we told them nothing illegal. They had to respect all laws, including municipal zoning ordinances. So the thing that was most popular was going up to students, like friends of someone, and pretending that you went to high school with them, and then totally freaking out that person. So somebody would pay them like $5 to go up to their friend and pretend that they went to high school with them, because it was hilarious. So they just did that over and over again. Like once they figured out that that was a good shtick. Yeah, they get pretty creative. No, the $43 one was food delivery. And we had a restaurant delivery and a grocery store delivery, so there's 2 different ones. It was pretty good. They have an hour from when I assign the assignment. So they can't leave the classroom until they come up with a short business plan, which is who's their customer, what are they selling, and how are they going to market to them. And they have to email me their business plan before they can leave the classroom. So from start to finish, it's pretty good. Everybody came back with cash. It was pretty fun. Other questions about getting started in entrepreneurship, how to get students more involved, how to get, yeah.
So you mentioned a couple things. One was sort of some innate abilities.
Yeah.
And the other was fear of failure. Can you get traction with people who are risk averse or haven't identified themselves as potential entrepreneurs by exposing them to these kind of ideas?
So I think everybody can benefit by dealing with a little bit of failure in their life. Like I said, I think this entrepreneurial mindset is a core skill that will benefit people in the corporate world. As I talk to hiring managers, they're looking for more people who can figure things out and deal better in uncertainty. But I also think that people, like I said, people get introduced to it and then they find out whether they want to do it or not. And you don't have to be the CEO in a startup venture. You can find out that you just like to be around the space and maybe your skill set is a support person. So that's another thing that you get to figure out, whether you're the lead driver, the decision maker, or whether you want to be in a support role. But there are many people who never want to be the front person. They're Robin. Is it Batman and Robin? Like, Robin is a pretty important superhero, and Batman couldn't do his job without Robin, but they just decided they don't want to drive the Batmobile. And that's fine too, but you could still want to fight crime and have a lot of fun doing it. We have a lot of metaphors in class. Other questions? So we have a wide range of programs, as Ian Gable mentioned. If you want your students exposed to it a little bit, there's seminars that they can attend, or if you yourself are interested, there's a speaker series. So there's everything from, come dip your toe in the water and see if this is just something that interests you, to enroll in the high growth ventures or corporate innovation, or even the Entrepreneurship Alliance classes if you're an undergrad. And really see if this is something that you're interested in and figure out if you can commercialize an idea. But we are generating serious dollars on a daily basis with students, and it's really, really exciting to watch. Other questions that you guys have a little bit more time. We can talk about your specific idea and how you should start a business. We've got time for that too. Yeah?
So what kind of investment opportunities are there on campus, or once a business is started to a point, because most of them are not necessarily fear of failure, but they fail because they don't have money.
Yep.
And so what resources campus or Columbia as a community provides to those businesses which help them either to get ready for to pitch in front of investors, or
Yep.
get those contacts?
Yep. I think that's a fantastic question. So I would say the number one thing that we provide to entrepreneurs is helping them figure out when they should be raising money, because most people think that they need to raise money a lot sooner than they're really ready. So we help them figure out what legwork they need to do before they're ready, so that they get to a point where people are just throwing money at them, so that you don't even have to try that hard. Now, once you get to that point, there's a ton of resources. So Dean Gable mentioned that there's the Student Angel Group. So they have their own fund that they invest in companies. Then there's Centennial Angels, which is a local group in Columbia. But they have relationships to angels in Kansas City, in St. Louis. In our High Growth Ventures class, there are 3 St. Louis investors, angels, who are actually, our last day of class was yesterday, but they come from St. Louis. They award a $5,000 prize to the best pitch for students working on their ventures, and they're very involved in the area. So when they see something promising, they take it back to St. Louis. There's just so much inner workings between all of the different cities in the state, because whenever somebody sees a good deal, they want to share it with other people, and they know that they can get money raised much faster if they get other people involved.
Have any success stories on that?
Yeah, we have one that's going to be speaking in a little bit, so I don't want to take away any of their thunder, but they're a pretty incredible story of students that started out in the class and are now running a very successful company that's raised a lot of money.
I wasn't in the class, but I worked with the students from the class, and we worked, yeah.
And also, you may remember Luis Jimenez, who presented in the first session. He's from that class as well. There are a few others just from that class. If we went program by program, there are. Yeah, and of course, Manna is from that class, so she's kind of throwing us a little bit of a softball there. Thank you, Manna. But there are student success stories in each of the programs that we've had with businesses running out of those programs.
Yeah, we think that the pitching skills that we talk about in class are just core communication skills that, again, will be valuable whether you're pitching investors for a startup or whether you're trying to convince somebody inside of an organization to invest in a project at any kind of superior. We teach them how to put together a proposal that's a sales document that's convincing. Other softballs. These are great. Yeah?
How would you develop your skill set to be able to teach the class and
Yeah, through just repeat failure. So I was an attorney. Actually worked with Lena Knedlik there in the back from the tech transfer from the legal department in a firm. And I am an immigrant. I'm a refugee from the Soviet Union. My parents came here with nothing when I was 8 years old. They worked minimum wage jobs, and they started a business because it's really the only way they could make more than minimum wage. And it was a laboratory to make crowns for people's teeth. And so they started it when I was in middle school. By the time I was in law school, they had 15 employees, and they were no longer, shopping at food banks for food, but they were now employing 15 families, basically, and providing for them. It was pretty good jobs. And so I became enamored with entrepreneurship and what it could do, and they really wanted me to go to the traditional route, so I got a job at a big law firm, and I really didn't like it. So I quit when I was 24 years old. My parents were 30 when they came to the U.S., and the rationale I used was I'm going to try to make it as an entrepreneur by the time that I'm 30, which is how old they were, and worst case scenario, I'll speak English and have a law degree to fall back on, so things are not going to be that bad. So I gave it a try, and I failed, but a little bit less each time, and then started a number of ventures that did really well, sold a couple of companies, and the Kauffman Foundation was actually a client of one of the companies that I had, and when I sold that company, they asked me to stay on board as a senior fellow and exposed me to hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs in mentorship opportunities and educational efforts. And so everything that I've learned is either through personal experience or working with other entrepreneurs. And many entrepreneurial stories are actually quite similar. They get stuck at very similar spots, and they're very, very stubborn people. And so you have to be very creative as to how you teach them, because they think they're right. That's why they're entrepreneurs. Any other questions? Any question from the legal department? No, just easy, smooth sailing. Yes?
I'm a professor, and I think I'm an entrepreneur, but not, I'm thinking about what will be my next NIH proposal.
Uh-huh.
Because I have a technology, it's almost ready, but it's how do I find a balance where I just submitted a sub-proposal last week, think about NIH, working on SBIR, and then I have to push for entrepreneurship and commercialization. I'm just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And fight with all the university politics. So where do I go?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. So the skills that it takes to write the proposals and even to do the pitches in front of investors is a totally different set of skills than it takes to figure out if something is commercializable, whether there's actual customers there who are interested in paying money for the product. So I would love it if we had the opportunity to get some students to work with you and help you vet through the idea and see if there's what aspect of commercialization that there is. Their biggest emphasis is to figure out specifically who the core customers would be and then what pain point this would solve for them. And oftentimes as entrepreneurs or inventors, you have an idea of the thing that this does and why it would be good, but the market picks something completely different that you never saw coming, and I think that's really valuable to figure out if it works. So I don't know if you've seen commercials for this card called Coin. So it puts like all your credit cards on one piece of plastic, and you get to push a button on the credit card to pick which credit card you want to use, but there's no numbers on it. And so they're marketing it as a card to replace all the credit cards in your wallet. But it turns out that consumers are really interested in it because people can't steal their identity when they hand it to a server at a restaurant. They can't copy down their information. So it's a very different set of customers, very different marketing plan. So you could see how the write-ups and the proposals that you would write for that would be totally different than trying to commercialize it and seeing who the target customers are. So those are the exact opportunities that we love to work with, love to expose students to, and we promise you that they will give you real results. They go out and they talk to people. They actually try to sell products. And we do that both in the corporate innovation class and in the high growth ventures class. So in corporate innovation, we actually have a Missouri-based company coming to us with a problem that they haven't been able to solve internally, and students are competing to launch initiatives to solve that problem in hopes of actually starting a new initiative inside the organization. So we would love to work with you to help you save a lot of time. Okay, good. Sold. Anybody else thinking about it? Gosh, if I don't get to make sales in the morning, it's just not a complete day. So that feels really good. Thank you. Yeah?
What do you think about international opportunities? Entrepreneurship is clearly a global phenomenon. So specifically, would you consider building an international component in one of your classes?
I think that's a very good question. I think that there's an international component to almost every business that we've worked on this year. We definitely consider the international implications of almost every company that we worked on, and we actually had some international students that provided feedback. So one of the companies was a farming product, and several of the international students had better contacts internationally. So the U.S. students would interview farmers in the U.S., and then the international students were interviewing farmers in China and Korea, and that was really cool to see who they talked to and the results that they were getting and how they were different. So I think that we consider the international implications in every venture if possible. We definitely talk about it because the investors are certainly interested in how they could get a broader market to whatever products we're working on. But I would just add, whether it's international students or students from other disciplines outside of the School of Management or in the MBA program, anytime that there are students from different disciplines that are in our classes, it makes the entire class richer, whether it's the Entrepreneurship Alliance or the programs in the MBA program. If the more students we can get from outside disciplines, the better it makes the entire experience for everybody. So Dean Gable and I have spent a lot of time brainstorming how we convince some of you to help us spread the word about the valuable experience that students can get through these classes that are going to help them for the rest of their careers. We got 5 more minutes if anybody has a burning question. Yeah.
You see a lot of students that are interested in like social entrepreneurship or social ventures, like as a crossover from other departments.
You know, I know that that's a growing trend right now. Definitely millennials and Generation Z are more interested in social impacts of businesses. We haven't seen that as much in our students this semester, but I know it's definitely a growing trend. But whether you're starting a socially impactful for-profit, a nonprofit, or just a for-profit, you need to figure out how it's going to make money. Nobody cares how much of your product you're donating to charity if the coffee doesn't taste good or the shoes don't feel good when you put them on your feet. So we focus on the core and making something commercially viable and something that people actually pay money for. And the social aspects are always bonus. People want to feel good about the social implications, but they're bonus. If the core isn't there, then there aren't going to be customers. Cool. Well, I welcome any questions. My email is candordk@Mizzou. If you have any follow-up questions, would love to chat with you if you're interested in any of the programs, either undergrad or in the graduate program. And I try to sneak in undergrad in the grad classes whenever I can. I know that's not great, but any of the classes that your students might be interested in, we'd love to chat with you about. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to talk to any of your classes about commercializing ideas or entrepreneurship or any of these programs. I'd be more than happy to do that. Cool. Thank you very much.
Okay. Diana, thank you very much. Let's move to Chris Fender now. Chris is going to speak to us about why entrepreneurship is important to the university. Chris, it's all yours. Do you want this mic, or are you going to use that? It's up to you.
I think. Can you hear me all right with this, or is this on? It's flashing. Yes, thanks again for having me, and I'm excited about the opportunity to speak a little bit about this subject. And in the interest of full disclosure, I'm not an entrepreneur myself either. And I'll talk a little bit why, maybe in a little bit in a couple of slides. But I did grow up on a farm, and I think farming is still one of the ultimate. Farmers are the ultimate entrepreneurs, and the skills you learn there definitely come into impact. And so I was asked to talk about why the university is interested in entrepreneurship, and so let's step back and take a little bit of a higher level view, I think. And I realize that some of this may be preaching to the choir a little bit, but I think it is worthwhile to talk about why we would do this. Anytime you're in an organization and you're going to explore something new, I think it's important to understand how is that going to impact your mission, how is it going to be impacted by your mission. And so entrepreneurship is something that impacts every one of our missions as a university. Our 4 missions of teaching, research, service, and economic development are all vital. Now it's advancing on me. Yeah. I can do it. And so when we look at the teaching mission of the university, I think one of the things that is important to keep in mind when we teach entrepreneurship, we teach about entrepreneurship, and we teach in an entrepreneurial environment, we're really fostering critical thinking skills. And I don't think there's anything more important that our students can learn than how to think critically about anything. And so the engagement of entrepreneurship as an activity is vital to the teaching mission as I see it. Research, again, a pathway to create impact through the inventions, the innovations that are developed. Thinking about how those are going to impact people and commercialization is the best way to do that. And then service is one, being able to share our expertise as experts in a given field to help others create impact. So other entrepreneurs that need the services that we can provide and the expertise in a given area to solve problems, I think is also vitally important to the service mission of our university. And then the economic development mission really speaks for itself, catalyzing the economic vitality of our region. And so again, why this is important, I think, for us to think about this is being able to tell the story of why this is important to the general public. Because I think there's a misconception sometimes that, if we're interested in research or entrepreneurship, that comes at the expense of teaching or it comes at the expense of the student experience. And I think we need to make sure that we're saying absolutely not, that it enhances those experiences, and we're making our students better prepared for their future, whether it's as an entrepreneur or working in a more traditional environment. And so, as we lead the narrative in this area, I think understanding how this impacts our mission on every way is vitally important. Now, the university is also, I'd be remiss if I said that revenue was not also important to the university, and that entrepreneurship, our ability to work with entrepreneurs to commercialize technologies, represents a valuable revenue streams. And I notice I said streams and not just one stream. If we license a technology to a company, chances are that's only one stream of revenue, and that's a sales royalty that we would negotiate on that license. But if we're working with startup companies, we may take equity, and there would be liquidation events of that equity that would provide revenue. Those startups could raise investment and then sponsor research back with the university to help them solve problems. So there could be a sponsored research component. SBIRs, STTRs are a good example of that as well. And then also this idea of philanthropreneurship. If we do this well, and if we foster entrepreneurs and an entrepreneurial community, I think that returns down the road from people that want to give back and help the next generation. And so by creating that environment that allows people to succeed, we we hope that we create philanthropreneurs that will then come back and help us with the next generation in funding new programs. And funding programs that can really benefit, create an impact right away, as opposed to maybe building a building, for example. Funding actual entrepreneurial programs will see their impact much sooner. So why are entrepreneurs important to the university? And I think it's important to understand that there's a subtle difference between innovators and entrepreneurs. And there's really a lot of scholarly work out there. If you look for it, there's a lot in the economic development entrepreneurial blogosphere about this very subject. The university, academia, is filled with innovators. We innovate very well, and that's really core to what we do. And even prior to that, invent, I would say, is even prior to innovation. Creating an invention is prior to creating an innovation. But we're all innovators at the university level with our research programs. But not all innovators can be or are entrepreneurs. And you don't have to be an entrepreneur. You can still be an innovator, and you can still participate in the entrepreneurial culture by being an innovator without having to be an entrepreneur. And one of the striking differences I think that entrepreneurs have, and this is probably why I'm not an entrepreneur, is entrepreneurs have this appetite for risk that some people don't have. Quite honestly, when I look at my dad wanted me to come back and farm with him, and I really didn't want the level of risk that goes along with that, and so I went a more traditional route. But the ability to sort of think about a business and not just the innovation itself, how people are going to acquire that innovation and utilize that innovation, and that is really what the entrepreneur does. And so in order to gain the resources needed to advance technology, investment requires both innovation and entrepreneurship. And you'll talk to investors, and they'll say, they're investing as much in the management team as they are in the innovation itself. And so they're both vitally important. So why are startups important to the university? Really, they become a vehicle for advancing a technology. And if you can think of a commercial success of a product or an innovation as a touchdown, using a football metaphor, then the startup is really the running back that is carrying that ball to the goal line. And they're going to get beaten up along the way. They're going to get tackled, but they get back up and run a new play and ultimately, hopefully, get to that goal line. Sometimes we have to punt, but ultimately, the idea is to get to the goal line, create something that is successful, and startups are the vehicle for that. And what they do is really understand where the risk points are of technology advancement. Will the technology scale? Is it something that we can reproduce accurately, consistently, time after time? What is the regulatory risk associated with that? And things like that. But primarily the first part of a startup is really reducing the technical risk. A lot of that, and it's not it's more of a continuum of that there's not a given point at which the university would hand off a technology to a startup, and a startup would then reduce the technical risk. That is sort of a continuous process. But the startup is really thinking about how am I going to reduce the technical risk, because that's what investors, they don't want to invest in something that has that level of risk. And so really creating that bridge over, what we call the valley of death, which I'm sure most of you have heard about, where businesses fail. The entrepreneurial culture that the university can foster and work with startups can help create that bridge. And by reducing that technical risk, the startup then can be in a better position to assess downstream risk factors like regulatory risk or market adoption. And I think another very important part of this is, as we talked about the importance of industry-sponsored research, startups can provide a really solid pathway to industry engagement. And startups are increasingly becoming the D of the development of R&D for large corporations. Large corporations are sourcing new technologies and new products by looking for startups. They have their own venture capital funds, and often they tend to invest earlier than traditional venture capital funds. And so you could imagine a company like IBM. They've been doing this for a long time. They have a very well, Johnson & Johnson's another one that have very well-developed venture arms, and they're out looking for startups that have products that could be core to their business, and then they'll partner with those, reduce the risk, then acquire the startup. And so you can really create a company without ever having to sell a product. You have to think about the product that you're going to sell, understand how it's going to get to market, but the end game might be getting acquired by a large corporation and advancing the technology to that point. And by being able to, the university working with you, that can create a point of contact that could result in sponsored research back for the university. And so if we look at sort of graphically what this kind of looks like, if we look at the university, what the university does is innovate. We provide the innovation. And even before that, we provide the invention. And in the IP talk, we talked about sort of where those points are, what is an invention, where you get to that point, and how you get something protected that then you can market to entrepreneurs or investors. And so at that point, a startup might be the vehicle that we choose to advance the ball forward. And then surviving that valley of death, how can the university work to shorten the valley, bridge that valley by creating an environment that de-risks the technology? So we're walking alongside the startup with programs like the Cultural Translational Research Program, where we're taking some of that technical risk out by looking at research and development that isn't traditionally funded through the traditional sorts of funding. So you'll hear later some funding opportunities that exist around the university to do just that. And so the idea is if we can shorten the valley, create that bridge, that's going to make it more attractive for investors to come along and work with us to then put a product on the market, develop a commercial success. And so shortening that valley is, I think, something that we haven't really traditionally thought about. Historically, it was sort of, this discrete handoff point where we do a license agreement and then the company's on their own. And increasingly, we're thinking about ways, how can we either maybe not do the license at that point, advance the technology further in the university, and have the license at a little bit later point, create the company at a little bit later point where it's less risky, and how do we fund that? Or licensing and then walking alongside the startup as they're doing that. And finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about sort of how, what the landscape looks like for what we're doing over the last 5 to 6 years. These are all companies that have been developed around university technology or with collaboration with the university. These companies are all raising money. Many of them have products on the market. Many of them have received regulatory approval. I think if you look across the board here, just off the top of my head, I could easily put together a figure of $100 million plus that has been either invested in, raised by all these companies to advance university technology. And so it really is, we want to see this list grow. And our friends from Elemental Enzymes, you can see, are there. But this is something that I'm excited about, to see this list and see the work that we've done. And yet, as we do these, we get better at doing it and have more opportunities to do it in the future. So with that, I'll take any questions. I guess we'll do questions at the end. So.
You could take a few right now, if you'd like.
As part of a license agreement where we would transfer the commercial rights of a piece of intellectual property to a company, one of the things we can do as consideration for that license is take an equity stake of that company or own part of the shares of that company. And what that does is then maybe reduces the amount of capital a company has to raise at the beginning by us becoming an equity holder, and at some point downstream as the company becomes successful, we would then sell the equity or liquidate our equity either after the company is an initial public offering or additional rounds of investment, and hopefully then that equity value is created back to the university for that. Well, you could think of it that way. So, for example, we might file patents, or we do file patents, and those have to be paid for by somebody. We don't have finite resources or infinite resources to file patents. So, one of the things we're looking at is how can we take, we can create a bridge there for the company by taking an equity in exchange for some of the IP costs for a period of time, and then company becomes successful, we get the money back to pay back those expenses. So it's not always just putting cash in for equity. There's a lot of other in-kind things the university can do to create equity, and sometimes it's just a part of the consideration for the license itself too.
How much equity will the university put into the patent? What percent of the company could they have?
Generally, it's low, less than 10%. I think we have in our policy ways to take greater amounts of equity, and depending on the situation. But most generally, for technologies that we're licensing to a company, it's only going to be a small percentage. We're not going to have a voting board seat. We may have a board seat, a non-voting board seat, so we'll know what's going on with the company, but really our involvement isn't too great with that, and so it's usually a fairly small percentage.
Other questions? Chris, thanks very much. I really like the way you made the distinction between innovators and also entrepreneurs. I think that's a really important distinction, and Shubhra, I think your question really goes back to that point of how can you be both? It's up to you. You tell me. But I think some of us are, and that's why it's also the notion of professional risk, reputational risk, financial risk of time that could be put into other things. So part of what we need to solve is that part of the equation for innovators. I feel real pressure to try to do that and to try to figure out how to de-risk it for faculty members who want to be innovative but are not going to be able to be entrepreneurs per se and start the company also. And so I think we will be addressing that as we go forward. Steve, can I turn it over to you? Or was there a question? One more question or a comment? Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to ask, in relationship to the last discussion about taking an equity, do you see the university's position changing in terms of how much of the risk the university will take? To your point, Chris, typically you've kept it low, covering those kinds of things, but is the university willing or interested in taking a greater stake in companies to try to foster more entrepreneurial activity?
Yeah, I don't think we have much choice. I think as we look at the fact that fewer large corporations are likely to license directly, as Chris said, then we need to find ways to leverage resources that we have and to marshal resources that we may be able to bring to the university to make more equity investments going forward. That also means we're going to have to be shrewder and smarter about those equity investments than perhaps we have been in the past, because we don't have infinite amounts of money, obviously. But to answer your question directly, yeah, I think we will have to do more of that, and I kind of look forward to it, to be honest with you. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Wyatt now, who's going to talk about the entrepreneurship ecosystem for us.
I might just mention, people talk about entrepreneurs being risk takers, and there's a certain level of that is correct. I think one of the things that sometimes people overlook is the fact that entrepreneurs believe that they have a way to mitigate those risks and to overcome the challenges in order to be successful. But a lot of times, looking as an outsider, it sometimes seems really risky. And when people talk about entrepreneurs being risky, I often share this story. And I didn't intend to do this morning, but I often remember a company that we had the opportunity to work with, and this has probably been 15 years ago. But this company had the idea, started the business, and was quite successful with this, and I thought they were crazy. And the reason why I think they're crazy is, why would anyone take this risk? You might be asking, well, what in the world was the business? This company came up with the idea that in large power plants, they have large boilers that they use the steam to operate the assembly line and all of these components of the factory. Well, sometimes those boilers will get a leak in them or have a problem that generally what they do is they shut them down and have to go in and prepare them. Their idea was, we'll go in with them burning and hot. So you're talking boilers of thousands of degrees. They came up with the outfit, they came up with the tools, and they would literally go inside a burner of these boilers inside the fire and weld and fix them while they were boiling. And to me, that just seemed crazy. But, you know, they knew how to overcome that risk. So to them, it didn't seem nearly as crazy as what it did to me. And as a matter of fact, that service was so valuable, they had a plane. They'd fly around the country to plants that they needed it, because if you shut down a boiler, sometimes it would take a day or two to get it back up where you could run a whole factory. And so I share that just to give you a context of risk. But really my assignment today is to talk a little bit about the ecosystem. And you've heard the phrase, you know, it's good to be in the right place at the right time. And I think we're in the right place. So if you look at a lot of the rankings for Columbia, Missouri, you'll find out that in Forbes, we were ranked number 6 in the best small place for business and careers. Columbia jumped 9 spots to finish first among small cities for the best performing cities. And one of the contributing factors was our high-tech GDP and our high-tech industries that drove us to the top. So if you just think about Columbia, there's all sorts of rankings about us being one of the best college towns. You just go through all sorts of different things. But what you see is Columbia is a great place. So I think you're at the right place. And I also think you're at the right place to be at this too. But the other thing is, it's really a great time, because Columbia's ecosystem has continued to evolve in order to help support entrepreneurs. And what I want to do kind of quickly is run through some of those resources. You might want to jot a few of them down. You can go to the Economic Development website, and on that website there's a list of most of these resources. We also have a electronic guidebook that lists all of those out. We'd be happy to send that to you as well. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of those resources that exist out there. So you've heard us talk a little bit about credit classes. These are classes that are available to students. We have the Entrepreneurship minor, which is an MU undergraduate. We also have a graduate program called the Life Sciences Innovation and Entrepreneurship program, which is an MU graduate certificate. I think it's directly led by Jerry Parker back there, kind of provided the leadership for it with medicine and business and engineering. which gives you a great opportunity to learn more if, in fact, you're wanting to take it from a graduate perspective. And then, of course, also the Crosby MBA is an MU graduate school in the business school as well. Great resources. If you're not necessarily interested in wanting to look for credit offerings, there are several non-credit offerings. The MU Extension Business Development Program offers several different non-credit seminars from a few hours to longer in depth. And Steve Devlin, you might raise your hand. He heads up the Extension Business Development programs. Also in the College of Business, there is a program called the Missouri Training Institute, which offers several different types of training programs you can embark on as well. But beyond education, I think one of the greatest ways to begin to be an entrepreneur is through experiences. How do you learn and get an opportunity to experience, to fail, to succeed, to learn what works and what doesn't, and to really get to know yourself? And here's several of them. The Entrepreneur Alliance, which is housed in the College of Business, led by Greg Beer. He heads it up, but it's applicable to students all across the different disciplines. We also have Climb, which is a student organization focused on entrepreneurship. The first president was Luis Jimenez, who now is CEO for Eternigen, which is one of the spin-out companies. If students want to learn more about how do you invest, the Student Angel Capital Program is another one, where it is an opportunity where students get to do the due diligence, then to end up actually investing money and to seeing how that turns out. And it just doesn't stop. For example, in the business school, we also have experience in music entrepreneurship. We also have entrepreneurship training dealing with being a farmer and a rancher. So there's lots of different ways to be an entrepreneur and places to look for experiences. In addition, we also have the Reynolds Journalism School, which the Reynolds Journalism Institute, which has a fellowship. So if you're wanting to look on a business idea that ends up relating to new media, it's a place where you can take a year off, work on your idea, be able to move forward. You just have to apply for that fellowship. Another great program is the Biodesign and Innovation Program, where we take a doctor and an engineer and a business person to go through and end up looking at the needs and actually creating a product by the end of the year and trying to take that to market. Places, if you're trying to commercialize technology, one of the first places you'll want to stop is stop by and see Chris or any of the other technology specialists across the campus, because they'll help you make sure you disclose your invention and also help you work through appropriately protecting it. And if you decide you want to start a company and license it, they're the resource to help you move it forward. We also have the Coulter Translational Partnership. So if you created an invention, generally you need to have a doctor and an engineer involved in that, but you can apply and they will help you work through a process and hold you accountable to take those next steps and actually fund part of that development. Other places, the Missouri Innovation Center. Bill Turpin will be up here a little bit later talking a little bit, but our Life Sciences Incubator, they will provide counseling and assistance to help you think through your technology and the commercialization. In addition, the Small Business and Technology Development Centers are also another resource that can sit down and help you think it through and help you take the next steps. If you're just still looking for places for research, Pivot is a great tool to look at it. Looking at there's prime funds that can help in going after your research program. And those also not only are in some of the sciences, but they also exist in, for example, we have the MU Arts and Humanities small and large grant programs that can help start some of your research. Some of the other research funds that are available, there's the Research Board, the Spinal Cord Injury Research Program. That's one if you've never thought about it. I would highly encourage you to think about it. We generally have extra funds in that area, and it has to deal with that, but there's lots of other technologies and things that one can explore to move forward. I'm not going to talk too much about Fast Track. I think Scott's going to talk about that, and Chris a little bit about the Fast Track funding and some of the interdisciplinary funding and Fast Track too. Also, there's a little bit around some of the funding sources through Centennial Investors, Missouri Technology Corporation. I think you all are going to cover those as well. Also, many times when you get ready to start your business or you're an entrepreneur, you may be looking for space. Where can I locate my business? Where is there space? One of those locations is a life sciences incubator. Others include downtown at the Ready building. If you don't know where that is, look for the tallest parking garage in town. They're on the ground floor of that, and I guarantee you there is plenty of parking. But they also have incubator space as well. Out south of town, there is a private gentleman who provides some accelerator space at Museo. And then, there, of course, for students, there's the MU Entrepreneurship Program, which has space in the unions. Now, one of the things that's always very important is to get experience with a lot of other entrepreneurs and begin to learn what they're doing, as well as sharpening your skills. So, for example, in the spring, and I think that's in April. Is that right, Jim? Do you have the date? Yeah. April 10th is an Ignite. The Ignite conference is actually, I think, in February, and then the pitch is in April. But there's an opportunity where you can pitch your program, pitch your idea, your business, and there are awards for that. And I think they're $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, but you also learn how to hone your pitch skills. So that's a great opportunity. There's Startup Weekend that's held out at Museo, which is another great resource where you spend all weekend coming up with an idea, working with other people to pitch your ideas, and also end up with funding. The incubator I talked about earlier, they have pizza parties. I think it's every Friday, and not only can you get free pizza, but you're also able to share with others. There's the Million Cups that's held down at Ready every Wednesday at, is it 9, 10, 9? Where two different people will pitch their ideas, and this is in collaboration with the Kauffman Foundation. And it's a great opportunity to see what others are thinking and also network with other entrepreneurs. In addition, those are also streamed. So if you can't make it down to Ready, you can go to the Ready website, click, and you can watch the event as well. And then Colin has started a effort to take some of that concept to the campus. A lot of us like coffee, some of us don't, but college students love pizza. So he has created the Million Slices of Pizza. So to get students together talking about entrepreneurial ideas as well. There's also a TEDx Como. There's the MU Climb. That was that student organization. Has a tech expo and pitch competition. They also have a seed grant pitch competition. There's the MU New Venture Idea Competition. There's the MU Show Me Business Plan Competition. There's the MU Allen Angel Capital Education Program. The RJI Showcase. So you can see there's a lot of things going on in our community that are available to entrepreneurs. Pardon? Hack Mizzou. Thank you. Missed one. Hack Mizzou as well. Also, one of the interesting things is the College of Arts and Sciences has joined to be a part of Pipeline. And Pipeline is an effort where they take 12 fellows each year. You have to apply for it, and then you are trained. They try to take some of the top entrepreneur companies, primarily in the technology area. But for a whole year, they work with you in some modules for training. Some of the national leaders come in, and you become a part of the Pipeline community, where also you're with these other peer entrepreneurs that continue to work with you. So it's a great opportunity as well. And you can go to their website to see that. In addition, we're also offering entrepreneurship training for faculty. There's a 4-hour session that's available, and then there is a 8-week session that literally takes you in depth. There's the flyer up there as well, and there'll be some starting in January, then those will be starting throughout next semester. The other thing is we'll be bringing on board a venture mentoring system that was conceptualized from MIT, and we're going to be bringing that on board in the spring. It should be available to start accepting companies as well as coaches and mentors. It'll be a group mentoring process to help companies move forward. If you've always wanted that group of people and experts that can help you, counsel you in your business, this is going to be very exciting, and we're really looking forward to that. The kickoff of that with the companies and the mentors and in the community will be probably in late April, first part of May. But wanted to let you know that was coming. And then the Missouri Technology Corporation has some idea funds, and I think they're going to discuss that in a few minutes. Any quick questions?
So there's a tremendous amount actually going on, and one of our biggest issues is gathering all the information that Steve just shared in one place. And so Steve will be working on that in his new position, trying to put that together, trying to help people like you, Schubert, figure out how to get through the different stage gates of entrepreneurship and innovation. And do you want to just say a few words about that, if you would?
Yes. So we have and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, we have a book that lists a lot of these resources as well as links. So we generally send it out electronically because most people like to be able to just click in the document and go directly to the link. So if you'd like that, just let me know, and we'll be happy to send it out. It is always an evolving publication because all of a sudden you send it out and somebody goes, oh, well, you don't have this included. So we add it, and it moves forward. In addition, we are also looking at a lot of communities have mapped out their ecosystem, and we are working on that. We're in process to graphically map out all of the different resources and kind of different clusters, and we hope to have that pulled together in the next month or two to be able to share that. So you'd have a graphical representation. If this is what I want, you could click, you could go to it, and then there's the resources that would be very easy for you to access. Yes, Colin?
Steve, we're actually...
I mean, Paul, sorry, I call him Paul.
Colin's over there, yeah. We're in the process of hiring a journalism student and a communications student to help us put that ecosystem mind map together. And again, it's going to be a living document, so we're going to be working on that diligently.
Good. So stay tuned. It will be coming.
Steve Dedman, are we going to also join VentureWell? I think we are, right? Do you want to say a word or two about it?
So there's an organization called VentureWell. It used to be called the Intercollegiate Alliance. So we recently joined an organization called VentureWell. Previously it was the Intercollegiate Alliance for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And they have several programs very similar to what you might consider like the NSF I-Corps program. They have training opportunities for student entrepreneurs. They also have funding available for faculty that are developing coursework in entrepreneurship. And so we'll be getting the message out in terms of what are opportunities associated with that. And they have a conference in D.C. in March, like last week of March, that Paul and Sandra will be attending for us.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Okay, and thank you, Steve. You know, there are a lot of people in Columbia named Steve. It's sort of interesting. Everywhere I go, I run into Steves. I don't know what that is, but somewhere along the line, that must have been a very prominent name in the area. I'd like to now introduce Scott Ullman and Chris Bouchard. I guess, Scott, you're going to go first, and Chris, I hope you're going to also talk about the boot camps and all that sort of thing, which are pretty exciting for faculty and others. And Scott, why don't you go ahead and continue this discussion about all the opportunities we have.
Thank you. In some ways, I think I drew the long straw this morning because I get to talk about some of the financial assistance opportunities that are available for faculty entrepreneurs. In no way is the list of resources I'm going to talk about this morning exhaustive. There are a lot of opportunities outside of Columbia and Kansas City and St. Louis, but I tried to cover the ones that that I've seen some of the startup companies in Columbia utilize to grow their company to the point of having products on the market and even to the point of company acquisitions. So the first one I'm going to talk about, and actually the first three resources are internal to the university and they're research-based. They weren't originally designed to be entrepreneurial programs, but I think the output or outcomes of some of these projects could result in a technology that would have commercial potential. So the first one is the Research Board. This program is directed primarily to new faculty or faculty whose research is taking them in a different direction and they need some financial assistance to get that program started. The total funding available under the program is $2.4 million and awards are up to $75,000. And what I tried to do throughout the presentation is I highlighted the application periods in red if they're either open now or will be opening soon. So you'll see Research Board application period opens January 5th. The next one is the Spinal Cord Injury Program. This was referenced earlier. This is actually a state-funded program that the University of Missouri system manages. It provides funding to researchers across the state of Missouri, not just the University of Missouri, who are doing work in there is spinal cord injuries and congenital disease processes that affect the spinal cord. The nature of the work can run the gamut from medical treatments or devices to improvements in equipment that enhance the quality of life for those with spinal cord injuries. The application period is a rolling deadline, so you can apply at any time. As Steve mentioned, there's usually money available, so I encourage you, if you're doing work in this area, to apply. We have money for that type of work. Next one is the interdisciplinary intercampus program. This is a joint program between university system and all four campuses. The purpose of it was to enhance collaboration among the campuses and across disciplines. So projects need to have a researcher from at least two campuses and across different disciplines. Each campus involved in the project can request up to $50,000 with a maximum of $200,000. So if you have a researcher on all four campuses, each campus could request $50,000 to get to the 200. Application period opens February 2nd, and deadline is May 1st. Next one is the MU Coulter Translational Partnership. This is an MU partnership with the Wallace H. Coulter Foundation. These awards are focused on biomedical engineering solutions that benefit patients and society by addressing unmet needs. They offer seed grants of $25,000 with the goal that if you get a seed grant, then within 36 months, then you would hopefully be eligible for a bridge grant award, which is $100,000. With bridge grant awards, the expectation is that at the end of that funding, then it would lead to a commercial event, license, or professional funding, say from a VC or angel investor. This seed grant requests have an open deadline. Bridge grant deadline is November 2015. Next one is Fast Track. This is a program of the University of Missouri system out of Dr. Foley's office. This program has been around for a number of years, and a number of the projects that have received funding have actually created companies and raised significant amounts of money. We've recently divided this into a Phase 1 and Phase 2 program, with Phase 1 being focused on early stage development, prototype creation, testing. It's not for basic research. It does have a commercialization kind of bent to it. The goal is to further the technology so that it's more attractive either to a licensee or as a startup company. fund amount is $500,000. We provide up to $50,000 in funding. And the way the application process works, last year was the first year we did this. The applicants will actually make a pitch on their campus of their proposals. Then the winning pitches will come to Columbia and pitch to a system panel of internal and external panelists. A lot of them are angel or venture capitalists. Then the winners of the system pitch then will receive the award funding up to $50,000. Application period for Fast Track Phase 1 is January 15th, and the deadline to apply is March 6th. As I mentioned, Phase 2 is new for 2015. What we found was that there were a number of projects we funded under the original Fast Track program that still needed some additional funding to get to the point of commercialization. So we created Phase 2, which is available to prior awardees of Fast Track. They can apply and receive up to $50,000 to further their technology and, again, make it more, hopefully, obtain more interest from licensees or startup companies. This one, the deadline isn't until August of 2015. We're waiting for the existing round of Fast Track from last year to end so that those people would be eligible to apply. The Missouri Technology Corporation has a number of programs available under its IDEA Fund. The first one is Tech Launch. This is a program that provides pre-seed funding to startups for IP development, in-depth analysis of market potential, and proof of concept testing. The awards made are up to $100,000. And MTC funding, all their programs require a one-to-one match. So to get the $100,000, you need to find another $100,000 provided either from angel investors or actually, I think on Tech Launch it doesn't have to be angel investors, but you have to have a match for that money, and it can't be grant dollars. Next program under MTC is the Seed Capital Co-Investment Program. It's designed to accelerate private investment in Missouri startup companies. These are seed capital funds available up to $500,000. Again, you have to have a match. In cases that I've seen, centennial investors, oftentimes if they invest in that much money, is used as a match to get the MTC funding. Some speakers earlier mentioned Centennial Investors. This is the local angel investment company. It was started in 2006 by the Chamber of Commerce. Their primary focus is science and technology startups. There have been a number from out of the university they've invested in. They're not limited to just university startups, and recently they've expanded their reach into Kansas City and St. Louis, not just Columbia deals. They prefer deals in the $150,000 to $500,000 range. And you'll see at the bottom here a number of University of Missouri startups that they've invested in. Newsy is actually one that in late 2013 was acquired by Scripps for $35 million. So that was a good investment for them and for the university as well. Next one, MU Allen Angel Capital Education Program. This was also mentioned earlier. It's a student group of angel investors that manage their investment funds. The investments they make are real. They invest money in not just, again, University of Missouri startups, but any startup company that they deem worthy. They also do some due diligence for centennial investors for some of the investments that they're considering. They invest up to $50,000, and they have an open deadline for their applications as well. New Venture Capital Co-Investment Program, again, is a program under Missouri Technology Corporation. They provide up to $2.5 million. They need a match from other venture capitalists. And this this program has been around for a number of years, and they, let's see, I don't have the deadline on there. On their website, on each of these from Missouri Technology Corporation, on their website, I'll provide a link at the end. You can see the deadlines they have for each of their programs. They try to time them so that they're not running concurrently, but you can go to their website for those deadlines. Last program we'll mention is the High-Tech Industrial Expansion Program from MTC. This program provides up to $3 million in support of industrial expansion efforts in Missouri. The program targets biotech and high-tech clusters with an emphasis on those that leverage Missouri's rich agricultural history. For this program, the awards are typically low-interest loans, and the awards are up to $3 million. So, and this, I believe this talk will be posted on the website so you can get these links again. These are links to all the programs I mentioned. As I indicated, these aren't exhaustive. There are a number of other resources in Kansas City and St. Louis, many of which some of the Columbia startups have tapped into. Just for fun, I totaled all the investment opportunities. If you met all the requirements and were able to obtain the maximum funding from each of the programs I mentioned, there would be about $13.5 million that you would be able to raise. Now, I provide that for entertainment purposes. Don't walk out of here thinking that you're usually going to be able to raise $13 million from these programs, but hopefully it gives you a flavor of the level of financial assistance that's out there for startup companies. The point is, if you have a strong technology and strong business idea, then there are resources out there to help you with the development and bringing your technology to market. So I think with that, I think we're going to have Chris Broussard come up and talk about SBIR, STTR. Did you have a question, Nancy?
Can you back up one slide on the high-tech?
More about I'll mention them, though.
And a licensing of one of our technologies access that?
Steve did mention
Sure.
them.
Absolutely.
So what if somebody wanted to construct some facilities to increase, say some new facilities on campus that would increase they needed for their business?
Right. So they would just go to MTC, apply to the program. I don't know, to be honest, I don't know all the details of all their programs, but certainly, yeah, they could apply to MTC for that money. Yes? Two more. All right. Are you telling me I went too quickly through these? Is that what you're saying? One more. I'm sorry? Right. So this is an angel investment group. Most of the requests for funding that they receive are in the $250,000 to $500,000 range. Centennial's made up of probably close to 60 individuals. No, that's not true. They would look at a deal that was $100,000, certainly. I mean, their preference based on the amount of investment. And one thing I should mention, when you get to these external sources, the programs I talked about, other than the university-based ones, you're giving up equity most of the time for those deals. So for Centennial investors, if they're going to be going to the trouble, I think, to draft the documents, negotiate it, they want to have a pretty good stake in the company. So, but yeah, they would consider a $100,000 investment.
Okay, Scott, thank you. Let's move on to Chris. Chris, you're going to talk about SBIRs and the like, but maybe you could just briefly also just reintroduce what the SPDTDC does. And, yeah, it's a mouthful for me.
Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah. And just maybe reiterate what Steve Wyatt said about the boot camps and the classes that your team will be putting on for faculty.
I was going to take the liberty to advertise that partway through my presentation here. Sure. Scott talked about funding opportunities at the university level, at the state level, and also some of the local angels and VCs that may provide some funding. This presentation is about SBIRs and STTRs, which is at a federal level. This money is available at the federal level. There are federal agencies that have parts of their budget set aside to fund research connected to small businesses. Purpose is to advance technology, advance research in the small business sector. So that's what I'm going to talk about primarily in my presentation. What is an SBIR? You've got the names here, and small basically is the federal definition of a small business, generally speaking of less than 500 employees, so that's a pretty good sized company. Business, that means it's a for-profit business. So we're talking about small for-profit businesses. Innovation, this is all about advancing innovation in your research and advancing the technology that is found at different research institutions. And it is all about research and advancing that research and finding and proving the merit of some of that research then make it available to the marketplace, to society, and solve societal problems. There are 12 agencies that fund SBIRs, and here's a list of them. You can get a copy of this after the presentations. Department of Defense is definitely the largest agency that funds SBIRs. The STTR, now we're talking about small business technology transfer. It's basically the same concepts, but it's got more emphasis for research institutions. When I use that term, our definition is the University of Missouri. We're talking about the research that's done here at the University of Missouri. And so there's slightly different qualifications, and I'll explain some of those differences in a little bit here. The participating agencies of STTRs, as you can see, there's 5 of them here. So what are some of the differences between these two programs? Basically, the SBIR allows but does not require a research institution to be partnered in it. So if you've got a small business someplace off campus, not associated with the campus, you can apply for SBIRs. We are focused here primarily on that research that's going on campus here, and creating small businesses out of that research is going to be a requirement for an SBIR. The PI of an SBIR has to be employed at least 50% by the small business entity that's applying for the grant. STTR, this is where there's a little bit of difference. You don't need to be primarily employed by the small business. You could be a research faculty member here on campus and apply for an STTR. So a couple things. You heard some of the modifications, some of the university things, talk about Phase 1 and Phase 2. It's probably modeled pretty much after the SBIR program. Phase 1 is all about the proof of concept. Is the science, is the technology that's being researched here on campus got merit in the marketplace? And that's what the Phase 1 is all about. And you can see the different time frames, 6 months and up to $150,000 for SBIR and $100,000 for the STTR. Phase 2 now is moving that. You've proven the concept to the federal agencies, and now they want to seeing what's the viability of commercializing it and going towards prototyping and proving its worth in the marketplace. And so there's a little bit bigger money available in Phase 2, and the time frame is a little bit longer. You cannot apply for Phase 2 if you've not gotten a Phase 1, so it is a series here. Phase 3 is really not a funding phase, but you better be showing the commercial strategy that you have when you apply for the grants. And so Phase 3 is looking for other kinds of investments and funded into commercialization. How they work, every agency is a little bit different in some of the detail, and I'm not going to go into that detail, but I think the important thing on this slide is that last bullet is that they're all looking for outcomes after each phase and proving those outcomes are viable, and then showing how it's going to eventually be commercialized. So keep that in mind if you're going to be applying for one of these grants. The next two slides is where I think is most important here to talk about. It's not so much the listing of where you can find the solicitations for these grants, which is a good website. Go there and look at it. I encourage you to do that. But what I want to encourage you to do is think like an entrepreneur here. And that's what this presentation this morning is all about, is thinking like an entrepreneur. And so when you go through these solicitations, think about how your research might have a different application than you're currently thinking about. And you heard Diana talk a little bit about modifying because the market said, I want this, I have this need, and quickly modifying it so that you meet that market need. You'll find federal agencies have needs. That's what they're trying to do, is solve a problem they have. Your research, you may not have thought about how that research may solve this problem for this customer, being a federal agency, might be able to apply it. So it's the entrepreneurial thinking. Don't get stuck in a paradigm that says this is the only way that this technology could be advanced. Think about other applications, slight modifications to your technology, and how it might apply to a new customer base. So that's what this slide is about, not so much the listing of solicitations. Go through it and think about, hey, I think there might be an application if I just modified a few things in my technology to apply it for this type of a use. And this is the other slide I want you to pay attention to, because it's very important. If you're, a lot of speakers talk about the pitch, talk about making sure you understand what a funder wants. And that funder could be a customer, it could be a granting agency, it could be a bank that's loaning you money. So you've got to be thinking about the funder and think what they're looking for. So the first bullet is what you all are excellent at already. And that's the technology, that's the research, that's the science that you're doing research in. That's very important. But what is the big challenge for people is to get it into a business sense. And that's where you probably, I encourage you to work with the local resources that you have here on campus and here in town to help you speak the language of business. Because if you don't have a good strategy to commercialize, you're not going to go anywhere with these kinds of grants or any funder, because any funder really wants to see if you got the business skills to make it all work. So that second bullet's a very important thing, and you probably have to go outside and talk to somebody that help you put that science into English. Translate it so it makes sense to an investor, to a funder, and seek outside help to do that. And so that when you make your pitch, you're addressing those needs of those funders. And obviously the third one's very important too. This is the value proposition. You know, who's interested? Who would buy this? Certainly in the public money area, they're wanting to see the societal outcomes or benefits to this research, to the commercialization. And so you've got to address these three bullets very much in your pitch and when you apply for any of these grants. Along that line, this is where I'll throw in my little pitch about the boot camps and some of the things that are available to you to translate that science into a business model that makes sense to a funder. And Steve put up a slide earlier in his presentation about the boot camps that are going on next semester. There's some initial ones that have concluded now, but moving into January and February, we've got a day-long program to help you understand what entrepreneurship entails, and then an 8-week program where you really dive deep and you can start getting some of these requirements that those funders are going to expect from you. Funders, I'm using in a very broad term. I don't care who the funders are. Keep in mind, in business, funders are usually customers, and so you've got to be thinking that ultimately in the commercialization plan. So there's resources out there to help you do this, and please seek them out. Couple advantages of these grants. They are grants. That's what's nice. There's not too many grants available to businesses. So what does that mean? You don't have to pay it back. You don't have to give it back. It's not a loan. It is your money to use to promote and to advance the research that you're doing. The government doesn't take any equity positions, so you're not diluting your equity in any way with these grants. Generally speaking, the company retains their ownership of the IP. There are some conditions there. You need to understand what they are, and I've got a link here that you can go look at all the legal stuff that says what those exceptions might be. And then the other thing is that these technologies likely have a buyer. I mean, these agencies have a problem. They're looking to you guys to do some research to help them solve their problems. If that research is something that does solve their problem, they want to buy it. And so after this process, you've got a customer, a buying customer, a paying customer for that product that you eventually create. And so that's another big advantage of this kind of funding. And it certainly raises the merit, raises the awareness of other funders that when you get an SBIR, the federal government is saying, hey, there's something kind of interesting here, and we want to explore it a little bit further. And other funders are going to kind of take notice of that as well. And so the last bullet says, hey, once you get an SBIR, improve some of your technology, you're going to see that you can fund, or other people are going to be interested in investing in you as well. Just kind of some just overview of what I've talked about here. Here are the different agencies, and you can see the percentage that each of those agencies funds SBIRs. This is kind of interesting too. You've got to be aware of some of the ins and outs of SBIRs and STTRs. As you know, the federal government, there's ups and downs in funding all the time, and this shows how over the years the dollars funding SBIRs and STTRs has gone. Now 14 looks really low. It's because it's not a complete year here. But these are just updated the other day, so you've got pretty current figures here. But you can see they vary. And one of the other real struggles with SBIRs is just the way Congress funds the government. And as you know, we're still in a CR right now, and that can delay funding of some SBIRs within a fiscal year as well. So just be aware of some of those challenges that you might have in getting SBIRs funded. I'm not going to talk in any depth about other kinds of funding, but we talk about all these things that are available on campus and applying for it, both in the campus, state, and federal level, and looking for investors as well. But, this is the old-fashioned way that businesses run. Bootstrap it. It's still an option out there, and you can sell one or two, make a little bit of money. In fact, Diana talked about that. There she is. She's nodding her head. Bootstrapping is a viable business model. And so don't just go looking for that free money, because this might be a very viable way to do it. And when you start showing that you have people interested in buying what you have, boy, that attracts a lot of attention. And other forms of funding, friends and families, sometimes say friends and fools, but you can find other investors just in your own circle of influence that you have. Loans. Banks still do provide loans to businesses. Startup businesses, yeah, it's a little bit harder to do it, but if you have a proof of concept, you show that you've got some sales or something like that, you might be able to get some debt financing as well. And we talked quite a bit about investors, but there's many kinds of investors out there, and from angels that may be looking for small deals to medium-sized deals to VCs that are looking for big deals. So anyway, that was a quick overview. I do want to stress, think about how your research fits into a business model, and that is typically the biggest struggle for researchers to do. There is assistance around that can help you. And so here's some the SBTDC offices. We've got one at Lafferty Hall and one downtown next to Ready in the huge parking garage downtown. And MIC is also have services available to people, too, to help in the same area. Any questions?
Chris, thank you very much. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask that we hold off questions, actually, continue to move on. But there'll be lots of time after the session to get together with Chris and his colleagues to talk about these very important issues. I'd like to move on now to Jen May. And as people get involved, who are faculty members who work for the university, get involved in entrepreneurship, we have to manage that relationship that you have both with the university and with the new entity. And it's traditionally called conflict of interest. But I give Jen a lot of credit because she titled this session not conflict of interest, but confluence of opportunity. And so with that very positive approach, I'm going to turn it over to Jen May to talk about how we do this and stay out of trouble.
Thank you, Dr. Foley, and I can't take credit for the confluence of opportunity, but very graciously borrowing it from Dr. Foley to talk about this session. And, you know, I thought about this a lot, and in looking at the time frame that we have, and I know that I'm the only thing standing between you and getting a chance to talk with our great guests from Elemental Enzymes, which I know you want to hear from them. So I want to be brief, and you know, we've got a lot of great resources around this campus that can help you with a myriad of compliance policies and variety of things that we have to do. So I'm not going to talk today about any particular conflict of interest issue, although we're going to touch on that, or any of our other compliance issues. I want to talk more generally about compliance and about how that fits into what you're considering or maybe doing here today and being an entrepreneur, because all of these things we've talked about today, all these funding opportunities and all the different types of opportunities that are available to you out there, all this confluence, comes with it a lot of other things and a lot of responsibilities, policies, procedures, rules, laws, all types of other stuff that are going to come up. And so that's my job today, is to bring that position forward so that you have that bit of background going forward as well. But I would say the most important thing here, not only for my talk, but for all the talks that we're having today, is reach out to us more about your particular situation, your particular question, your particular position or job or entrepreneurial idea that you're having, because we can talk to you more specifically about what all this stuff means and what all these funding opportunities are and what all the compliance aspects are, more particularly for you. So today is just a flavor, and so that's what I'm going to do for the next few minutes. And you really can approach compliance in a couple of ways. You can do it in this very checkbox way. Okay, here's a list of the things that I have to do, and I've checked a box that I've done it. It's a very perfunctory way to do it, and it probably doesn't always address the risk that you have to deal with, but it may achieve the instant goal. So it's certainly a valid way to think about, or perhaps procedurally deal with a compliance issue, is by checking a box or filling out a form. We're famous for forms. And I don't discount the forms, but what we really want to try to do and what we want to talk about is understanding the why. Why do we have these rules? Why do we have these policies? What are they there for? And then work with you and help you to understand the who, what, when, where, how of getting through that and getting to that green light, getting that confluence of opportunity happening and doing it in the right way, the legal way, the appropriate way to do it. That's going to be no different for you as a CEO or a founder of your startup, and we know that we're going to need to help you with that as well. So we're here and available to help you get on those paths to doing those types of things. If you're doing it within the university, we'll probably do a lot of that work for you, but the other side is available to you as well. So I just have some quotes and some fun things to throw up on the screen for us to think about today. And really, compliance is all about rules and policies and regulations and guidelines. It's kind of what we do. And some make a lot of sense, and others, quite frankly, don't make a lot of sense. But that's just the way that it is. And at that point in time, they are the law of the land. They are the rules that we have to deal with. And I think you'll find in talking with a lot of compliance people that we may agree with you that some of those rules don't make a lot of sense, but they are what they are, and we deal with them, and we'll work with you to try to work through those issues and move forward and achieve those goals that you want to achieve. Something that I thought this particular quote I really loved about the diamonds and the toothbrushes is it's really important to think about what's important. What is the most critical aspect of what you need to do, and understanding that balance. Making mountains out of molehills or making diamonds into toothbrushes and toothbrushes into diamonds doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes. And hence, this is really at the root of what our new intellectual property position is here on the MU campus and within the system, is to think about what are those most important things and identify what are the real winners, what are the ones that maybe we can let go and be a little looser about. But each one of those is a critical assessment, and we need your help in making those types of decisions and working through those issues and we're going to be providing and rolling out some tools in the next semester that are going to help do that for you as we move forward and continuing that intellectual property conversation and ultimately towards this goal of entrepreneurship. This is important to focus on for you with your startup as well. You can't focus on everything. You can't put all of your energy on absolutely everything, so you really need to focus on those diamonds and not worry so much about those toothbrushes. And in doing that, and in thinking about that, we sometimes have to make hard decisions. And so we really can't stand in the middle of the road because we're just going to get run over and killed like an armadillo. We need to know, and we need to take a side and take a stand on an issue that we decide that we want to do. For compliance standpoint, that means that we will give you advice. We will give you our input and our knowledge on what the rules are and how those work and how they fit with what you're trying to do. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's going to have to be you, particularly if it's in your startup, making that final decision on what the right approach is. But I would encourage you to make a choice, take a stand, because it's the only way to really move forward and to keep going. We can help you understanding what those and finding what those bumps might be along the road and hopefully avoid those yellow stripes and the armadillos along the way. So when we do identify those lines, when we do find those, it's really best to strive to kind of find a way to balance it and make it as simple as we can, but some things can't get too simple. We need to make it and make it work and make it right, and also follow along with the compliance aspects, with the rules and requirements that are out there. So sometimes simple just won't seem simple enough, but that's what we're here to do, is to try to help move through that process and move it forward for you and work through some of those issues. So our request to you would be to come to us, as I mentioned before, come to us with your opportunities, to us with your ideas and your thoughts on this, and we'll help you try to identify where those issues might be and make it as simple as we can, but understanding that it may not get very, very simple at the end, and that's just kind of the way we have to deal with it. And so I would say that we can't be naive. We need to understand that it's a complex world, and compliance can make things even more complex. But all of these other things make it pretty complex, too. There's a lot of things to think about and a lot of things to balance and deal with. So we have to just get rid of that and say, you know, we're going to deal with the fact that this is hard, that this is tough. I think I've heard that comment made a number of times today, that this is not for the faint of heart. And that's why I'm not an entrepreneur either. So in all honesty, it's really not for the faint of heart. It's very hard. It's very difficult. You're going to fail. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be complex. But if we're all working towards a common goal to move it forward, probably going to be able to achieve more than we ever thought we could before. So let's keep working towards that process. Let's keep you moving forward in that process, because otherwise anybody can have a trip up, any size company, any example. And so I want to bring up a conflict of interest example that is pretty common and something that we see a lot. But unfortunately, this one happened to one of the larger corporations in our country, in the National Football League, and we've had a lot of sports metaphors today, too, so this one worked out really well. Who's familiar with maybe the Ray Rice situation and the elevator video? And he was, not a really good situation to put himself into, or anyone else to put themselves into, but the NFL didn't do themselves any favors either in dealing with the issue. They put together a team to review it that maybe had a little bit of a flavor of some conflicts there and some concerns about who was looking into that and how they were going to deal with it as an organization. And I think we've all seen over the past few months the fallout from that. And so our role here in conflict of interest is to avoid that last sentence. I don't want that last sentence said about you. Hold on, what's that smell? That would be horrible. Let's try to avoid that. Let's get in front of those types of issues and see what we can do to move you down that pathway, make it transparent, make it make sense. Sometimes the answers aren't easy. It's complex. We have to ditch the naivete. But let's avoid that what's that smell sentence. The NFL didn't do that very well. And I think they're still trying to deal with some of that moving forward. So just to wrap it up, and I told you I would be quick so we could get you on to the next section. This is really the last slide that I want to put out there, and just really saying that supporting and vigorously promoting our integrity, your integrity, both as an institution, as a small businessman, as a faculty member, moving forward is of the utmost importance to us. And here at Mizzou, we have an obligation to the public to engage with honesty and integrity. And so a lot of times we need to take a step back farther than maybe the risk tolerance in other areas might be willing to take. The university might not be able to take that much of a risk. But we're going to investigate these things, and we're going to work with you to try to get to the achievement that you want to get to for all of your endeavors while maintaining our character and maintaining our integrity along the way. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them, and we'd be happy to talk more specifically about any of your compliance issues that you have. If you want to bring it up here, we can. Otherwise, we're always available to you and are happy to take your questions and work you through those sticky issues. Any questions? Yes.
Let's take one.
So you have somebody that's been working for you, applying with companies that they work with in their research. How is that monitored through the year? Do you have reports of when many hours they spent? That money, I mean, how do you watch over that?
Right. So what we try to do is work with individuals to get what's an initial disclosure on the books. We call it an outside interest disclosure form, just to have a sense of what the relationship is, what it is that they're engaged in, what they're doing, and what their expectations are. And we look back historically to say, okay, if you've been doing this for a time, how long have you been doing it, or what are you projecting to be doing over this period of time? And we're going to take that through a review process with a committee, and a number of my committee members are here in the room today. And they are going to take a look at that, as well as we're going to engage with that individual supervisors and dean or director of their department to say, this is a situation that we've got. This is the outline of what they propose to do or are doing. Does that make sense with what their other university responsibilities are? And that's really the big rub that we're looking at there, is to say, does that make sense? Can you get done what you're responsible for here, as well as doing that? And do those things have any other conflicting rubs that we need to deal with? And it could be a variety of things. It could be that they want to bring some funding into their lab from a small business, or it could be a million other little different things, or it could just be very quite simply, I'm going to go and do this consulting gig. It's a one-day thing. It's done. It really ranges the gamut, and so we take it from a very fact-specific approach, take it to that review process and move it through. And I'll tell you, we have a real range, too, of dealing with it. It could be very simple as to getting supervisor approval, and as long as their supervisors are okay with that activity and understand the balance, then we're okay, all the way to managing it more, particularly with an oversight management plan and an ongoing review process through a review committee to deal with those types of things, where we will circle back on a regular basis and touch base.
Jen, perfect. Thank you very much. And thanks for taking such an upbeat approach to a topic that sometimes makes people feel a little downbeat. I really appreciate it. And I think you'll find that Jen and her team are there to consult with you and to help you get things done and get them done well. All right. With that, I'm going to now introduce Bill Turpin, who's our CEO of the Innovation Center. Bill, it's all yours.
Thank you. Do I have to use this? I guess I do. Probably. Okay. Briefly about me, I'm going to try to make this brief and not repeat anything that's already been discussed today. Just a little bit on my background. I was born and raised in a small town named Bowling Green, Missouri. Who knows where that is? It's pretty small, 3,000 people. Went to University of Missouri, got an electrical engineering degree here in the 70s. And then I went off and had a pretty successful business career. I spent 10 years in Texas. And then my last 25 years were in Silicon Valley, California. I've come back, and I'm one of several people that have moved back to the area from California. And my primary goal is just to help bring my perspectives and experience to help people here. I think what I bring that maybe some other people don't have is just the real-world experience. I've started a number of companies. I've raised tens of millions of dollars of venture capital. I've shut down several of the companies I started, laid off everybody. I was actually at a venture capital firm for 6 months. We looked at Google Maps and passed on it. We looked at the Android operating system to run on mobile devices and passed on it. But we did catch the MySpace deal. That was all back in 2004. So what I'm here to do is just help startups I work at a place, it's located at the Life Sciences Business Incubator over by the research reactor. Hopefully everybody knows where that is. Interesting, funny story. I talked to a faculty member right after I got here, and she says, you know, I drive by that place all the time, and I wonder what you guys do in there. Is it some sort of elevated temperature chamber where you grow chickens? And I said, no, it's a business incubator. But the idea is the same. We help young businesses provide an environment where they can grow and thrive. So this is sort of the structure we have. The entrepreneur is in the middle of this. They're the sort of rock star that makes this happen, and that's your role if you want to come down to the incubator. And we surround the entrepreneur basically with what they need to be successful all in one place. So a lot of that is coaching. A lot of that is access to other resources, sources of capital. We provide suppliers like the office space they're in. We have a legal team that comes in and helps form companies. And we help them recruit employees from the university and cooperate with other entrepreneurs that are there. This is sort of the way it works. And maybe this is more step-by-step than anyone else has talked about now. The typical faculty startup usually starts with some research here at the university, typically around a technology. They file their disclosures, they file their conflict of interest policies, and they decide eventually to start a company. And so they get into the blue part there where if they come to the incubator, we can help them create an LLC or a corporation, whatever appropriate for them. We help them develop a business plan, do their market analysis, create a pitch deck. We can help negotiate the license from Chris Finder's group, which is what companies typically do. They'll get the license back because that makes their company more valuable when they have access to that technology they've developed. We work with Centennial or SBIR grants to help get money into the company. Eventually, they develop their product. They might even start regulatory approvals, depending on what their device is. They demonstrate success, and then eventually they graduate out. So we've had several companies successfully graduate out. That might look like they sell a license to a big ag company, or a big biopharma company, or maybe they'll go on and create the company and start building the products themselves. One other thing I wanted to mention, just to kind of reemphasize something Chris Finder said earlier, if you stopped at number 2, it's very difficult for large companies to know that this patent exists, that your technology that you've just developed even exists. And it's even harder for them to justify coming in and spending millions of dollars for it. So big pharma, all the major companies nowadays are doing less and less of their own research, and they're looking more and more to buy companies that have the solution they want, and they'll just go buy small companies. So that's why it behooves us to actually go through all this process in the blue to create a technology that companies do want to buy. So typically they want to buy a product that's made it through some of the regulatory process, has customers, and has a viable demonstrated business model. And so that's the steps we try to help people do while they're in the incubator to get through that process. Just one more slide. The areas we've been doing are all the life science areas. We've worked a lot with College of Veterinary, College of Medicine, College of Engineering, for all the ones on the left. With my background in software and new media, we're also going to be adding additional areas, creating a software accelerator and more software companies there. So pretty much any idea you can think of, within the near term, we're going to be able to start supporting that idea. So we're one of the 2 places, along with the Small Business Development Technology, where you can come in with an idea. We can do an assessment. If you're a good fit for the incubator, then we'll bring you on as a client. If you're not a good fit for us, we refer you to some other agency that can actually assist you. So I'm going to skip the rest of my presentation just on time, and I want to introduce Brian and Katie Thompson. They're the poster children for how you do this. They're not really kids, but But they started here in this very building. I'll let them tell their story. They're now one of the most successful companies that will soon be graduating out of our incubator.
Well, thank you, Bill, for that introduction. And the topic of ours is a success story. For us, we feel like we're getting there. But, until you have a product on the market that's bringing in revenue, we still don't feel like we've hit that quite success yet. So it's always a work in progress. But we have been through all the steps pretty much that were discussed today and worked with almost every single group here and individuals from those groups. And we can tell you how we did that.
And the other thing I'd like to add is this is not, like I said, a theory, and I'm really glad you guys put this together because this really is nice to see a blueprint from the beginning to end of how this should work. Because when we were starting out, we didn't have this, and we kind of figured out much slower process than this. So this is a really nice process to put together. And as Katie mentioned, we did go through almost every single step here as described. And so we can validate that this system does work. You can go from a university invention to a successful company by following these steps. And as they did mention, it is hard. I mean, there's a lot of steps, there's a lot of failure, but being able to overcome that is something that, I'm very proud of our company for doing. So, good.
Yep, and that was a lot of the process too. So it all starts with discovery. And that discovery actually happened here in this building in the lab of Dr. Stewart. At the time, Brian was a postdoc in that lab, and he was a co-inventor of the technology. So they invented the technology, they had a disclosure of the technology. Eventually they followed up with OTMIR and patented that technology here at the university. Brian and I met here in this building, and he was finishing his postdoc, and I was finishing my PhD. And we decided, trying to figure out what you're going to, two young people trying to figure out what you're going to do with yourself, where you're going to go find jobs. And we decided to try to license the technology back and get it out there. We saw the potential in the technology. We didn't really see the application really clearly yet. But we saw there was potential and we wanted to make a difference. And this was a way that we saw that you could take something, you can take an idea and actually get it out to the public. So what was that idea?
So one of the things that, to partially answer your question as well, is what's interesting about this technology is started with basic research. We really just started at the very beginning. We were studying different structures and how they have more rigid structures or more protected structures. And so we noticed that there's a trend that you would put a small peptide or piece on a protein and get it to become very covalently attached to a larger particle. And it becomes very resistant to a lot of different things you can do to it. And so by expanding upon this technology, we wondered what else can we do with this technology. And so one of the first things we did in conjunction with the Stewart Lab is say, can we use this to make a better vaccine? And so we went through the different steps to make a vaccine, and it was very successful. We had a lot of good response with it. And so we started saying, okay, what else can we do with this technology? And the more and more we looked at this technology, the more excited we got about it. And that was part of our decision to decide to split off and actually start a company and license the technology, is we really had a vision that this technology can have a big impact. And so, and I'll go into it a little bit in a minute, but we've actually had a lot of pivots for this technology. And, we went through, obviously, veterinary medicine here with vaccines, and we've had several pivots, and now we're actually very strong in agriculture, and we've had a lot of success in agriculture. So it's been many, many pivots, and that's part of one of the things that I think is important for being an entrepreneur, is being very flexible and going where the technology takes you. And then Katie will kind of give you a little more details on how we got to where we are now. But that's kind of a little background on the technology itself. But the key is that we can make very stable biological structures, peptides, proteins, or enzymes in particular, hence the name, and make them very resistant. And there's a lot of markets available for stabilized or enhanced enzymes. And one of our biggest challenges is that we have a platform technology that can do a lot of different things that impact a lot of different industries. How do we actually begin? You can't go after every project, every industry at once. And we had a lot of help from the SBTDC in really defining where should we go with our technology. And with that, I'll let Katie go through a little bit of the history of how we went through the process that was described here today.
So we developed the technology, or they invented the technology. We decided to license the technology back and start a company, Elemental Enzymes. We worked with the SBTDC and Paul Bateson specifically to really start all the process of really forming that legal entity and making that company. Around the same time, Brian took classes with the SBTDC. I was still finishing my PhD at that point. But we used all the resources that were available on campus to really start thinking about that, start writing a business plan, the first of several business plans in this case. So we did that. We finished up, so we're like, where do we start this company? Despite Brian's efforts to really want to start it in the garage, that wasn't so much of an option. And through different folks here, we found out about the Missouri Innovation Center and the MU Business Life Science Incubator. They had labs there. You can rent space. And you can also use the resources that they have there to further develop your business plan and further develop how you're going to commercialize your product. So we started there at the incubator. I think at this point we're on our second business plan. And at the incubator they had the class that you heard of, the high growth venture class. And at the time Jake Holliday was teaching it. And he came to us and he said, our students, they need some technology ideas to write business plans on. Would you guys mind sort of using your technology as a base for a business plan? And we're like, yes, of course. And we'd like to see what they come up with. What market did they come up with for this technology? And we defined it down to enzymes, which is a huge market. There's enzymes in everything from detergent to, small aliquots of research enzymes. So there's a lot of different places they could go with this. The students helped write a business plan on that. They actually chose the largest market, was it the detergent market, that they first wrote the business plan on. And we didn't give them a whole lot of direction for that, but they were a really good group of students. And they were interested in further defining a business plan and applying to some of the other big business plan competitions like the Rice Business Plan Competition and the Walmart Business Plan Competition. And that's kind of where I became involved and started working with them. I had been a student in the last year, so I was eligible to participate in these competitions, which was really helpful for me because at that point in time I had absolutely zero business experience or background. So we applied to the Rice Business Plan Competition. At least 400 business teams applied to this competition in the U.S. I think internationally it's more like 1,600. And it's down in Houston, and you apply, and they invite 40 teams down to come present. And we got selected as one of the 40 teams. So we went down and presented, and it was a great experience. They have all CEOs from local businesses and big companies come down to judge it, and they ask you questions, and it's really getting that feedback from people in the industries that can also help you shape your business as well. And at the time, this business plan was on environmental remediation. We were using enzymes in soil to help break down different compounds like atrazine and other things in soil. So we went down and presented. We got beat in the first round by what ended up being the number 1 and number 2 teams. So we went to the losers bracket. I think we won the losers bracket, but it was a great experience altogether, and it really helped move our business forward. And at that point in time, the students had also presented to some of the judges that were angel investors here for the business game competition on campus, and one of those judges expressed interest in our company and ended up meeting us, and we moved forward and found a director, and that individual, Steve Trampy, and we started working with him. After all these business plan competitions, we wrote another business plan, and we presented to the angel groups in Columbia and St. Louis. I guess I should mention the funding round, too. We had a friends and family.
Yeah, just at the very beginning, we did do a traditional bootstrapping with a friends and family round. As we developed our product, at least for certain industries, made those decisions, we did approach the Missouri Technology Corporation, and they were great to work with, and we did get initial funding through MTC. And during this process, as we were refining our business plan down, again, you you can't take on the 26 industries I think we found where enzymes are. As we whittled it down and had a defined product concept, we did approach the Centennial Investment Group and the Archangels Group out of St. Louis. We did do a pitch in front of them, and we successfully raised money.
With the help of Steve Trampy. And on that, we did have a specific business plan that we presented, which was environmental remediation. But we were very, we were very open, and we did pitch that we had a platform technology, and that it was likely that although we've researched this one market and we fit here, that we were open to the understanding based on our mentorship that that might change. And it has, actually, and it did. Through some of the investors from the St. Louis group, we met some individuals who were from the ag industry. Two individuals that came together as a group. They had been in the ag industry for 25 plus years, and they're like, wait a minute, you have enzymes that work in soil, and you have a platform technology that you can put different enzymes on there. What about enzymes for plants? And we went back to the literature at that point, and we said, oh, it looks like there are some things here that might help. And we started to develop those products. So this is after funding, so this is a sort of place where you're like, well, this is a tangent. Should we go for it? Should we stick with this remediation? But we knew that remediation, the business plan had some issues, like repeat customers. Once you clean up a place, what are you going to do for the next place? So, and that's, I shouldn't, it's still very much something close to our heart that we want to do at some point, but it's not really something you can get a company off the ground of really easily. So we ended up making a right turn into the ag industry. That was in November of 2012. By spring of 2013, through collaboration with some of the partners that we met through investment, we were able to get our product tested in 3 of major seed companies, testing our product as a seed treatment to enhance yield and enhance growth of major row crops like corn and soy. And since then, in the fall of 2013, we found out that we had a really good product. We had a lot of yield increases, and we sort of expanded on that. This last year, we had even more testing with more companies, and we gained the interest of one of the top 5 ag companies, and started to move forward with them. So now we have a product, we have a concept, we know it works, and we know it increases yield on corn, and we're working through the process of developing that and getting it to market with more partners.
And I think we're a good example of what everybody talks about is the pivot. And obviously we had all our people working on remediation, but we always knew our technology could work in a lot of different industries. And when we first were posed, what can you do for plants? We invested a small amount of our resources to say, okay, we'll explore it and try it out. And it worked really, really well. And so we're like, okay, maybe we'll put a whole person on that, and that's all they're going to do. And over a course of 4 months, we literally went from nothing in agriculture to a full agricultural company, just because of the feedback we got from the right people you want to have feedback from, as well as we were kind of in a hot industry at the right time. So that combination was very powerful. And as Katie said, we were able to, in a course of 4 months, go from no ag experience to being tested in 3 major seed companies' trials. Coming out of 2013, we had tremendous results, to say the least. And we are now in testing with additional product lines in 7 of the top 11 ag companies. So we've had a lot of traction. We're growing rapidly, and we have at least 5 different product lines that are being tested to date, and we've had a lot of response. And we're continuing to grow in agriculture. So we always think that flexibility is one of our strongest assets, and we're able to answer solutions that are in the agriculture industry today. And just to give you an example, on our first product that's being tested, that's farthest along, if we get incorporated with the people we're working with now, and as Katie mentioned, we signed a major licensing deal that will be announced soon with one of them, but that product alone will increase the United States output by 1 billion pounds of corn a year. So it's a very powerful product. It's going to have a pretty good impact, and we're very excited, and that's just our first product. And we're working on, hopefully, a second deal with another company here in the coming months. So we've had a tremendous growth rate, especially over the last year, and we've had all the things you always hear about growing pains. So it is a very exciting times for us. But I do want to say the reason we're successful is knowing the right people, and we've had a tremendous amount of help from every group here. I mean, even the high growth venture class helped us immensely. Going to the Rice business plan and having experts sit there and really honestly attack your company was really helpful, because we rapidly knew what we needed to be a successful company. And we had people from different industries, and it was very eye-opening. But it was probably the best experience we had as far as getting our company mature really quickly. And so we've had tremendous help from the SVTDC throughout this whole process. It's been great working with Chris Fender's office and getting our patents up and running and defending them as well. And as I said, we've had funding from Centennial, we've had funding from Friends and Family, MTC, and so like I said, this process works. There's a lot of work to be done to get to the stage that we're at now, but this is a blueprint for success. So.
Brian and Katie, thank you very much. Would you be willing to take a few questions from the audience?
Sure.
How about some questions, folks, from the real deal, people who've really done it?
Just curious, is your technology GMO, non-GMO?
We have both. We have some technologies that are GMO and some that are not.
It also depends on where you're at in the definition of a GMO in different places too, which we found out as we progressed through regulatory as well.
Without necessarily naming figures, can you talk about percentages? How do the proceeds of what the income will be on this in the future divide up between you and your investors and the university?
Well, and it depends too. So we started the process early, so we're sort of licensing. Really, we'd like to have a little bit more testing under our belt. We'd like to have more proof of concept, a more developed, rounded product. And it depends on what stage that product is at, as far as, are you going to try to negotiate for upfront money from the license? Are you going to try to negotiate for royalty on the back end, and how that works? And every deal is different, and of course, I'm not at liberty to talk about ours at all. But we do have some, it's exciting, and every deal is going to be different as far as that goes. And I think it depends a lot on the product and the market size.
Do you see yourselves continuing to grow this company and staying with it, or would you see yourselves maybe flipping from this into another new company?
Well, to partially answer the question, and I think that what Bill put up here is exactly right. We've been in contact with 30-some companies, and they really are looking for companies that are slightly down that list.
Do you want to go back one slide? Maybe you could control it. I think that's the list you're talking about. Yeah.
And just from the feedback we've gotten is they really are looking for small companies to be their R&D arm. And it's becoming more and more apparent, and I think it's a trend growing, especially in agriculture and in pet food. But they really are looking for companies that have taken the technology from the university and moved it a few steps down the road. They're not usually looking all the way down, but they really are looking for somebody who's kind of kicked the ball ahead and got it a little bit of proof of concept, and then that's when they want to come in. They can also get the company cheaper if they don't let it go all the way down this list. But one thing that we're interested in is 9 out of 10 companies that are in our shoes ended up selling the company, and we've resisted that from the beginning because we knew that we had multiple product lines. And so we actually, and they're still kind of amazed that we didn't actually end up selling our company at the end of the day, and that we are able to hold our company, get a licensing agreement so we can continue to develop additional products. And we're in a much more better position to negotiate with the second company or the third company now that we're not dependent on that income. So. But yes, we are going to continue to grow.
Other questions?
I've got one.
Okay.
I'm always intrigued by family businesses, having been a part of family business. If you don't mind, can you talk about the benefits and the challenges to being husband and wife at the end of the day, and then during the day, business colleagues, and kind of the pros and cons? Because I know that can be very beneficial, but also can create some challenges.
I think it has a lot to do with knowing individual strengths and weaknesses of your whole management team and of each other. I know what Brian's good at, and he knows what I'm good at. We also know what we're not good at on both sides, and as well as like the management team as well. So really dividing out those tasks. So no case where we're stepping on each other's toes at all, but really just using all the resources that we have together to get something done. And we, as an entrepreneur, at least my position in the company has been a whole lot of that. It's like, okay, we got everything. Uh-oh, there's a leak over here. And whether it's on the science side or the business side, I know my position has been really flexible to sort of just, okay, how do we problem solve this? And somebody mentioned that earlier, critical thinking skills and problem solving skills are very important. How do we fix this as quick as possible and get back on track, or stay on track as we go forward? Just knowing each other's roles, I'd say, would be the most important thing. And, got to have a little bit of separation between work and home life. Okay, you got to say to each other, okay, we're not going to talk about this right now. We're going to focus on our personal life or something, leave that at work or something like that. So.
It's an interesting challenge to turn it off and come home, enjoy our children and ourselves, and try not to bring anything home. The good news is we actually worked together a little bit here on the research side. Before we started the company, we knew we could work together for long periods of time together and work out our differences. So it hasn't been as much a conflict as it could be in some
I
circumstances.
definitely wouldn't recommend it if you haven't tried it before you buy it as far as working together. We had the opportunity to work together here a little bit at the university before we started the company together.
Other questions, Tom?
Did you each have sort of crossroads moments where you had to decide if we're going to do this or we're going to do a traditional career track, and how did you do that?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that at the very beginning we realized, as being a grad student and a postdoc, there wasn't a time where we have less to lose than we would further on. If you're a professor, you've had a lot invested, you got requirements, grad students. At this point in our career, we're actually the most flexible and had the least to lose. And we feel like it was the time to take a gamble and start a company, because we didn't have a lot of holdings. We just got finished with a postdoc and a
We were
PhD.
used to the graduate student lifestyle that persisted for several years after graduate. Delayed gratification. Anyone with a PhD knows all about that. That helps.
And I think, honestly, if you look at the companies that, in the different communities here, at least in the biotech specifically, is a lot of them are founded by professors. And like I said, they do have, it's really tough to juggle. Obviously a professor job is a lot of work, and then a company is a lot of work. And it's interesting to see the dynamics of how people try to juggle that. At least we had the opportunity. We didn't have to, we only had one of those to deal with. And it's obviously enough to keep us occupied. But I do think that having a scientific career path does make you a pretty good entrepreneur, because in science, you can have failure and you keep coming back and trying different ways to getting past that. And that's something that's very valuable as an entrepreneur, is accepting failure and trying another way or looking around it, and not giving up. And I think going through grad school really was a very good experience for that, and knowing that, yes, I can get there, and I have a grand vision to get there, and just finding the way to get there. So.
Last chance. Oh, we have her. Sam?
I can tell you at the very beginning, as Katie said, we had very little funds. We went without pay for months and months, and we had very little friends and family around, so we were very cognizant of even the slightest amount of equipment or even pipette tips and those kind of things that you never really think, but that's an expense that you try to find everything used that you can. I think finding really good staff is probably one of the most important uses of funds. Just having more minds on a project can really accelerate it. It is a lot for a single person to become an entrepreneur and run a company, and it does help to have at least two to start out with and continue to grow. But I think resourcing staff is probably the best return on our investment.
One more.
If I could, going back to some of Diana's points, did either of you sort of self-identify
I do a little bit. When I actually started my undergrad, I actually was a small business management as my topic. I've obviously wandered quite a bit off that. And I ended up in biology. I really liked it. I had a lot of passion for it. But I'm always an optimist. I always believe I can overcome. And I think that's something that's paid dividends as well. And I think that having Katie's mindset, she's a practical, how do we make it happen? And that's a perfect combination for our company, is we believe we can make it happen, and Katie can institute and get us there. And so I think it takes both our mindsets for us to be as successful as we've been. You want to speak to your...
I didn't have any predisposition towards entrepreneurship. I think we were, as scientists, we were a little bit, one of the ways we met was through the Postdoc and Graduate Student Association. So we were a little bit, more outgoing type of scientist, which I think kind of contributes in some way. But I didn't have any preset ideas of entrepreneurship. But I think having an open mind is really important. I've definitely had an open mind at every point in my career. And I wasn't one of those people that said, when I grow up, I want to be this exactly.
But Katie's also been drawn to kind of leadership roles as well, so that's in her DNA as well. So that helps a lot.
Other thoughts, considerations, comments? Well, if not, Brian and Katie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let's give them a round of applause, please.
Thank you for inviting us here.
Yeah, absolutely. We look forward to seeing more of you and hearing more about your successes going forward and the expansion of your company. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who was on the panel, Diana and everyone else who participated. If you'd join me in a round of applause for the panel. Thanks to all of you for getting here early on this cold, snowy morning. I will also remind you that these presentations have been photographed, filmed, I should say, videotaped, whatever the right term is. And you could go back and view these at our website. Is it on the economic development website where we're hanging these, or on the research website? On the research website. And you can also get copies of all the PowerPoint presentations. Furthermore, if you would like to give me feedback and comments on how to make this even better for next year, for next semester, which will be next year, I'd love to hear that, and we will take those comments and suggestions into consideration as we formulate the plan for the upcoming semester. And our hope is to continue to do this enough so that eventually this becomes part of our culture. So please tell friends, tell family, tell colleagues about these, and please help us spread the good word that we are pivoting our culture and very much supportive of these kinds of activities. May all of you have a safe rest of the day. Oh, I'm sorry. You could still have a safe rest of the day, but I forgot that we do have door prizes, and so I'm supposed to pick out these things. Do you want to tell us, Dana, what we have again?
We have a buffet lunch for two at the University Club. We also have 2 tickets to the concert series, and then we also have 2 sets of tickets for men's basketball games. So there's a pair of tickets to the game versus LSU and a game versus Tennessee.
Okay, so first